What we worry about the most often shows where we trust God the least. God doesn't always tell you how. He doesn't always give you the answers immediately or even directly. Sometimes you got to make choices for yourself.
I've been chosen. Watch me put it in motion. Got strong emotions. Manifest what I've spoken.
If you're an athlete and you're struggling to find your purpose beyond your sport, or if you want to integrate God into your life and discover purpose, if you're lost and need encouragement, then this podcast is for you. Welcome back to another episode of Beyond the Painted Lines. I'm your host, Keith Datu, and we are on episode number 18 today. All right, this episode is brought to you by Anta Philippines. These are the Kai 1s. This is the floral colorway. I've worn these in a game a few times. Big fan of the Kais. Kai 2s are dropping as well, but definitely try out the Kai 1s. I'm excited to try the Kai 2s when they come out too, but definitely shop Anta Philippines. And the topic for today is decision making. The reason why I want to talk about this is because sometimes I find myself paralyzed from making decisions, right? Sometimes I don't want to make a decision, or sometimes I feel rushed to make decisions, big or small, right? It's like a part of me is like, okay, it's because I want to make the right choice. But the other part of me is like, I'm lagging. I'm taking too long. I need to just do something and move forward, right? So whether that's a big or small thing in your life, I personally think the worst decision you can make is to not make the decision, right? And what I mean by that is sometimes you let time elongate too far where a decision is just made for you, or letting someone else make the decision for you, right? Think about future you. Think about future me. What do I need to do now to accomplish X, Y, or Z in the future, right? Some things that come to mind when I'm faced with choices. I do my best not to try to do something, right? Because sometimes it feels like try is a failure word. So don't try to do something. Decide you're going to do something. Another reason why I'm using this topic today for the podcast is because sometimes making decisions are scary, you know, and it's we procrastinate, and it's like sometimes we don't want to do certain things, but we have to figure out a way to power through them. Although sometimes your decisions might be scary, I need you to have some faith that God will provide. Maybe you feel like God is telling you to do something, whether it's the harder decision, or decision making can be challenging for some people. And sometimes the decisions that you have to make are scary. You just have to trust that God will provide. If God is telling you to move a certain direction, or you know, that gut feeling you get, that intuition that like, this is the decision I should make or have to make, even though I don't want to make it. Sometimes you just got to do it and roll with the punches afterwards, right? I was in church literally today, and P-Pal Victory was talking about when you need to make a decision on something, try fasting. And I'm like, I've never thought of doing that before and trying to make a decision. But the way that he described it today made a lot of sense. When we fast, we get closer to God. We realize that we can overcome certain strongholds that we have when we fast. And in turn, that should help us make decisions. I am 29 years old now. There have been times in my life where I am the absolute worst at making decisions. A lot of the problems that I've faced growing up is that sometimes I feel like I'm not moving quick enough, right? And for someone who always feels like I'm trying not to waste time, and for me, like when I need to get things done, I try to be as urgent as I can. But there's also moments where I felt like I moved too slow. So what helps me when I make decisions is making deadlines, right? I need to know the consequences of waiting too long to make a decision. Like I said earlier, when you don't make a decision, sometimes that decision is made for you, right? And for me, that's the worst place to be in. I'm speaking pretty vaguely here of the overall overhead of today's topic, decision making. I'm thinking about times in my life where I've literally had to sit down, write pros and cons, or trust my gut feeling, or seek counsel from my mentors or family or close people in my life. I just felt like this would be a good topic to cover, generally speaking here. These are just some lessons that I've learned from making tough decisions. When I make super strong choices, I just have to know there's always a consequence. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad, sometimes it's delayed, sometimes nothing happens, right? But I just remember moments in my life where I'm just mentally paralyzed by trying to choose what to do. I want you to remember that good decisions, great decisions are made with certainty. Like, of course, right? You should feel like you're choosing the right thing to do. And you should feel absolutely certain that the path that you're deciding to take is the one that you should be taking. For me, I love to ask people for their advice and opinions, right? But I think you shouldn't ask too many people here. When you seek out too much guidance, it kind of brings you back into this mental paralysis of deciding what to do. But I absolutely recommend narrowing it down to just a few mentors or family or someone close in your life, right? Seek out their counsel, their guidance, their advice, and then ultimately pray and seek God for the answers that you need, right? Don't forget that it's interesting because it's easy to pick up the phone, call someone, set up a coffee date, and just chat, right? And pick someone's brain. But oftentimes I feel like we forget to sit by ourselves and pray to God, and it's not like in a movie we're going to hear thunder and God just going to speak to us immediately. But God speaks to us in other ways. I remember this time I needed some help with something, and I feel like I'm just asking, like, just go to my mom, my pastor, a couple different coaches, just another mentor, and just like seeking advice from all these people. And then when I finally sat down, closed my eyes, prayed, I just had this gut feeling to go read the Bible. I just okay. So I opened up the Bible. It was actually the book of Galatians. While reading scripture, God actually guided me on what decision to make. And then God answered my prayer, you can say indirectly or directly, through reading the Bible. And I just had this gut feeling on what path I should take. It said it loud and clear after reading. Man, I should have wrote down in my notes or something. I actually didn't write that story down. But I just remember that moment. I just wanted to share on this episode that reading the Bible will give you the answers you need sometimes. Also, another thing with asking so many people for help is that not everyone needs to know everything about you, your next move, right? Sometimes you should move in silence, move quietly, definitely keep moving, but not everybody needs to know every step that you're taking along the way. Time doesn't stop for you when you need to make big or small choices, right? You got to move swiftly. Don't miss the moment. Do what you got to do. Pray, ask for guidance, write down your pros and cons, trust your gut feeling, trust your heart. And from there, you just roll with the punches, right? There's also been scenarios where I feel as if sometimes I feel like you got to see the wrong decision through in order to know that it was the wrong decision, or to know that the other one was the right decision. Imagine feeling the need to know how wrong a decision is, right? And what I'm trying to say is that sometimes you don't know the right decision until you make the wrong one. But that doesn't mean you should deliberately make wrong choices. That's not what I'm condoning here. Naturally, we're not going to be perfect. Naturally, we are inevitably going to make mistakes and choose the wrong thing here and there. When that does happen, Just hold accountability for the choices you take, and just know if things don't work out the way they're supposed to, if things are delayed, if the answer's no, life will autocorrect. Eventually, God will put you on the path that he meant for you to be on. God will put you in the place you're supposed to be in. For me, that gives me a lot of peace that even if I make the wrong choice, God will eventually make sure that I get back on the right track that I'm supposed to be on, that he has planned for me. And it's going to take practice, and it's a learning curve to do things quickly and efficiently and appropriately, and putting God at like the center of all the things that you do in your life. But we really just got to trust God's perfect timing. But don't be discouraged when you make mistakes, because maybe that mistake was supposed to happen. We talk about this divine timing. We talk about how you will autocorrect back onto the path that God has planned for you. Don't forget that the result of where you end up is based upon the actions that you are taking now. I was listening to another podcast, the Ed Milet Show, and he described how if you don't make the right decision, make that decision right. I said that life will autocorrect, right? But it only autocorrects if you put the work in. You will get rewarded and get back to where you're supposed to be. Just trust the process and things will work out the way they're supposed to. All right, and I'm going to leave you with one verse today, James 1:5. If any of you lacks wisdom, you should ask God, who gives generously to all without finding fault, and it will be given to you. The way that I interpret this and applying it here in this topic of decision making today, if any of you lacks wisdom, when we don't know what to do, seek God. God gives us everything and more. There is nothing that God can't do. You should ask God, who gives generously to all without finding fault, and it will be given to you. It doesn't say when it will be given to you, but it's just a super good reminder. Don't forget that God is in control. Everything that you need or do or decide upon, one, he already knows what decisions you're going to make. And two, he already knows the steps that you are going to do in your life. And three, God has already made a way for you. So I hope my thoughts on decision making really help you out today here. And a final question that I want to leave you with is just something for you to reflect upon on your own time. What is a prayer that God has answered in your life? Thank you so much for listening to another episode of Beyond the Painted Lines. I'm your host, Datu, and remember, great decisions are made with certainty.
I've been chosen. Watch me put it in motion.